This sign has been made by Andy Reuter from Project Lab. Let's talk about editing DIY and instructional type videos. I believe that video editing will be more and more common in our society, just like with taking pictures. Majority of people will know the basics of shooting and editing videos. After all, this is yet another tool to tell a story. Some people enter the filmmaking world because they want to share and document their craft. I've collaborated with my friend Andy Reuter from Wisconsin, US, who has a DIY-centered YouTube channel, and video quality of his stuff is really good. So even though we are thousands of miles apart, Andy has printed and shipped me 3D sign of cut-to-the-point logo. The whole production process is documented on his channel, so be sure to check it out. I love watching people making stuff with bare hands, and I just find his editing style very enjoyable. I've seen DIY channels with many more subscribers that could learn from him. So today we'll take a look at what distinguishes him from others and at a few things that would make his editing process even better. Time remapping is very common in DIY videos, and Andy can really pull it off. There are tiny details that distinguish his technique from what you can see in most of DIY videos. He uses speed duration option in Premiere Pro, which you can open hitting Ctrl+R on the keyboard, but I will let Andy show you the settings he applies.
I like to do a few things here. First, I check maintain audio pitch. I change time interpolation from frame sampling to frame blending, and I check ripple edit shift trailing clips. It just saves you some time cleaning up the timeline. For maintain audio pitch, Premiere will make the audio sound closer to the tone of what was originally recorded. Instead of that high-pitched Alvin and the Chipmunks sound like this, you get a more natural sound like this. For frame blending, Premiere will add motion blur between frames on your clip, so it looks more like you're really watching someone moving at 500 miles an hour. Neither of these settings are required, but I just feel like they give a sped up clip more of a feeling of authenticity, even though technically they are simulations. One warning, if you try to speed your footage up past 1000%, Premiere won't let you keep maintain audio pitch checked. So for those higher speeds, you just have to nest a clip within a clip, and then you can speed it up further from there.
Now let's see the difference between frame blending and frame sampling. It's pretty significant. I think it looks more interesting for this kind of stuff. Bear in mind though that it may not be true, it may not work for other types of shots. For example, if the camera is moving quickly, it can cause very unpleasant ghosty results. For DIY videos, you very often end up with a lot of footage you won't need at all, like assembling a tool or organization of your working space. I've asked Andy how he shoots in order to make his editing process better, both in terms of efficiency and having good raw material to play with.
It can be pretty tough to think like a maker and a filmmaker at the same time, so there's often not a lot of room left in your brain to keep track of things like eye tracing. One thing you can do to give yourself a break is embrace center framing. Just always aim to keep the action in the center of your frame from shot to shot. This is a totally legitimate approach. You'll see it in movies from directors like Wes Anderson, George Miller, and Stanley Kubrick all the time. To make editing easier, lots of DIYer filmmakers recommend shooting short clips of just the action. You're basically focusing on scenes of transformation. But this approach does mean that you can end up missing out on those great accident moments that viewers love so much. Luckily, if you do let the camera roll and you end up with like 10 hours of footage, Peter has some great tips for how to save time when working through all that footage. I gotta say that my favorite speed editing tip from Peter is the Q and W shortcuts. These keyboard cutting commands are awesome. I have saved so much time instead of having to click back to that razor tool and then the move tool.
One thing I've advised Andy is to use subclips and markers for organization purposes. And having hours of footage you need to squeeze into 10 minutes piece, you can really benefit from it. First of all, within the project, it may be very useful to create subclips for very long clips that only partially have some interesting moments. Secondly, clip markers can be very useful not only within the project, but across other projects as well. I want to make a full video about markers in the future, but in short, there are two types of markers in Premiere Pro. Sequence markers that live only within the project, and clip markers that live within the original file itself. At least this is the case if the file type supports this kind of metadata. To add a clip marker, you first select the clip and hit M on the keyboard. You could hit M twice to enter marker properties and add a description or even marker duration. And what's great about it is that if you import that clip into another project, all of this metadata information will be there. It's very common in DIY videos to constantly cut between voiceover, talking head footage and montages with music on top. Let's see what is the process and the uses for editing audio.
My secret to editing audio is just to keep it organized. I always put my narration, environmental, and music audio on separate tracks. That way when I have the structure of the video done and I'm ready to edit the audio, I can select each audio type and apply a broad first stroke. For example, for narration, I normalize all peaks so it's easier to understand. But meanwhile, for environmental, I'll normalize for max peaks because a table saw is going to be louder than a paintbrush. And max peaks will help preserve some of the dynamics of those two different types of sound. Once you've done that, you can rewatch your film and tweak it from there. And it's always a good idea to listen in a variety of ways on a TV, your smartphone, headphones, just because those devices can change things so much.
Bear in mind that the goal is to quickly adjust the sound, not to make it cinema-like quality. One advice here: once we have our clips organized and distributed across different audio tracks, we can really benefit from using audio track mixer and submixes. Basically, it will allow us to edit whole tracks at once. Let's say we have music clips on audio tracks 3 and 4. We can create a submix by clicking on the audio tracks area. Now let's open Track Mixer and click that icon. Let's assign audio tracks 3 and 4 to be fed to the submix before master track, and now we can add up to 5 effects to the submix that will affect all of the music clips at once. Good practice here would be to apply EQ effect and lower the frequencies where the voice lives to make more space for it. Many people struggle with archiving their projects. Generally, I wouldn't advise to delete original media because storage has never been cheaper. But if you really feel like you don't need all of these files anymore, it's best to archive your project using Collect Files feature. Just go to File, Project Manager and Collect Files. Thanks to this feature, all of the source files you've used in the final edit will be collected in one single location. You can also use transcode option to archive only the parts of the footage that has actually been used in the final sequence, with handles on both sides. Andy told me that quite often he imports clips from the projects he worked on in the past. Whenever you want to go through that process, it's best to use Media Browser panel for that purpose. Simply navigate to the project file and you will be able to open any sequence by double-clicking. Now you can use pancake timeline technique, which I strongly recommend, and drag and drop clips between timelines. I have a full video about pancake timelines, so be sure to watch it. Please check out Andy's video and let him know that you come from Cut to the Point in the comment section. And if you're here for the first time, my name is Piotr Toczyński and this channel is all about mastering film editing, about streamlining the editing process so you know what's the point of every cut you make in the story you want to tell. Until the next time, shoot and edit like there is no tomorrow.